Okay, so this week we're diving right back into Survive the Island. And things are getting really interesting. Chapter 9, Domination. We've got Graham, Mayoli, and Tyfanna all converging at the lighthouse. And I don't know about you, but I'm on the edge of my seat here.
Yeah, this chapter is where things really start to ramp up. I mean, you've got Graham, our logic-driven player, facing a situation that completely defies explanation.
Right. It's like the island is deliberately messing with him at this point.
Yeah.
Offering this pristine lighthouse, the humming blue crystal. It's almost like a taunt. Like, here's your precious knowledge, Graham, but are you willing to pay the price?
It's a really interesting twist because we've seen how much Graham thrives on control. He wants to understand the rules of the game, to assess the risks, to make calculated decisions. But this situation, it throws all of that out the window.
Yeah, it's like the island is forcing him to confront the limits of logic. Remember back in Chapter 3 when he chose to explore the darkness?
Right.
That was a calculated risk, a way to gain knowledge and maybe exert some control over the unknown.
Yeah.
But this time, it's different. The island isn't offering a clear path. It's all shrouded in mystery and this sense of wrongness that even Graham can't quite grasp.
And then you've got Tyfanna arriving on the scene, which adds a whole other layer of complexity.
Right. It's not just that she's clearly under the island's influence. It's the way Graham senses something's off about her, even before he sees the compass embedded in her hand. It's almost like he's picking up on a deeper change, something more unsettling.
That's a great point. It makes you wonder just how deep the island's influence goes. I mean, we know Tyfanna has been struggling with compass, hearing those voices, but what if it's more than that? What if it's warping her personality, her very essence, in ways we can't even perceive?
Okay, now that's seriously creepy.
Hmm.
And it makes Graham's options at the end of the chapter even more significant. I mean, does he try to warn Mayoli? But that could put her in danger, right?
Right.
Does he investigate the crystal and risk further exposure to whatever weirdness is coming from it? Or does he just run?
Prioritize survival over knowledge, which for Graham would be a huge departure. Each choice represents such a fundamental conflict for him. Logic versus instinct, the pursuit of knowledge versus the need for self-preservation, and the fact that he's even considering descending into the endless depths below the lighthouse. That's just, wow.
Yeah, it's like his rational mind is screaming danger, but something deeper, maybe that primal fear of the unknown, is pulling him towards the abyss.
It's fascinating to see how this incredibly intelligent, strategic player is being forced to confront the limits of his own understanding. It really raises the question, can you survive this island by clinging to logic? Or do you have to surrender to something more primal, more intuitive?
It's a question we're seeing play out with all the characters, really, especially Mayoli. Remember how she started out? All logic and pragmatism,
Yeah.
carefully assessing every situation.
Yeah, she was all about minimizing risk, maximizing reward.
Exactly. But she's learned the hard way that this island doesn't play by the rules.
Her journey has been this fascinating evolution from logic to instinct. She's learned to trust her gut, to recognize those subtle inconsistencies that reveal the island's true nature.
Understanding that on this island, the easy path is often the most dangerous one.
It's like she's developed this heightened sensitivity to the island's manipulation, almost like a sixth sense.
And it makes you think back to her traumatic experience in the cave back in Chapter 5. That clearly left a profound mark on her. And it's shaping her actions now.
For sure.
And then Tyfanna shows up with that compass embedded in her hand. And it's like a punch to the gut for Mayoli.
It's like a confirmation of everything she's been feeling.
Right. This island isn't just dangerous. It's insidious. It can
Yeah.
change you, control you, twist you into something you no longer recognize.
It's a chilling reminder that survival isn't just about escaping physical threats. It's about maintaining your sense of self, your free will, in the face of a force that seeks to dominate and control you.
And that's what makes Mayoli's options at the end of the chapter so compelling. Approach Tyfanna calmly. Go in aggressively. Slip into the lighthouse. Or flee back to the cave. Each one reflects this delicate balance between caution and action.
Between gathering information and taking charge.
Exactly.
And remember, for Mayoli, going back to the cave would mean confronting a traumatic memory, a deep-seated fear.
Right.
But it also might be the safest option, at least for now. It highlights the difficult choices she's constantly facing, weighing immediate danger against long-term survival, logic against instinct.
It's like the island is constantly forcing her to choose between the lesser of two evils. And there's never a truly good option.
That's the nature of the game, isn't it? Survive the Island is all about pushing these characters to their limits and forcing them, and us, to confront the hard choices.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so captivating. So
Yeah.
let's delve a little deeper into Mayoli's story, and then we'll talk about Tyfanna, who might just be the most tragic figure in this whole saga.
Sounds good to me. It's like she's constantly trying to outmaneuver the island, like she's playing chess against this unseen opponent.
But the island always seems to be one step ahead.
Exactly.
And then we have Tyfanna.
Right.
She's gone from this skeptical player to, well, it's almost like she's become an automaton.
Ah, it's really sad to see.
Yeah. The island's influence is just so strong with her.
We see it in the compass, of course. But it's more than that.
It's like her free will is eroding.
Exactly.
Her ability to think and feel for herself. It's like she's being hollowed out from the inside.
And then there's that moment when she sees Mayoli. Do you remember how the chapter describes it?
Oh, yeah. It's like a flicker of humanity breaks through. This sudden surge of warmth, of kindness. Emotions she hasn't allowed herself to feel in so long.
It's heartbreaking, really, because you see a glimpse of the person she was before the island took hold.
Before the compass.
It's a testament to the power of human connection, even in the face of this overwhelming manipulation.
But then, that burning compass pulls her back. The voices drown out those fleeting emotions.
And you realize just how deep the island's control runs.
Yeah. It makes you wonder how much of the original Tyfanna is even left.
That's the question, isn't it? Is there any chance of her breaking free? Or has the island claimed her completely?
Her options at the end of the chapter are so telling.
They really highlight her internal struggle.
Approach Mayoli, risk defying the island, continue to Graham, submit to its will, or descend into the depths, take a leap of faith, and try to regain control of her own destiny.
Each path represents a huge risk, a gamble with her fate.
And we have no idea which one, if any, will lead to true freedom.
That's what keeps us coming back week after week.
Right. The suspense is killing me. Will Graham choose knowledge over safety? Will Mayoli confront Tyfanna, or will she run back to the cave? And what about Tyfanna? Will she break free from the island's grip, or will she become another one of its victims?
So many questions, and no easy answers.
But that's what makes Survive the Island so compelling. It's not just a game, it's a reflection of our own lives, our own struggles, our own choices.
And the consequences that follow.
Yeah, it really feels like we're watching a psychological thriller unfold in real time.
And the creators have done such a brilliant job of building the suspense over these past 9 chapters.
Right. Every week there's a new twist, a new challenge, another layer to the mystery. And now with Chapter 9, it feels like everything's coming to a head.
It's like all the storylines are converging.
And each character is facing this impossible decision. Graham, with the crystal and the endless depths. Mayoli caught between Tyfanna and the cave, and then Tyfanna herself, torn between the island's control and that glimmer of her former self.
I honestly have no idea what's going to happen next.
Me neither, but I can't wait to find out. We're going to kind of explore this pretty chilling transformation of Travis in Survive the Island. Specifically, we're going to focus on part 2 of Chapter 9, What Waits Below, which is just, I don't know about you, but it's that title alone.
Yeah.
It's just ominous, right?
We find him among these, what do they call them, blackened forms. Like these figures so corrupted, they almost seem to move as once, like his individuality has just been erased.
That visual, it's such a striking representation of what the island can do to, well, a person's mind, their will. I mean, the loss of individuality, this assimilation into the collective, it's powerful, and it's something that runs through the entire story.
And yet, there's this tiny little detail that really stood out to me, okay? Like, Travis, he feels this tightening inside, but it's not from doubt. It's from, get this, wondering what he's becoming. It's like this little spark of curiosity is still there, even as all his thoughts are, being simplified. That's interesting. Yeah, it does seem to suggest that there's at least a small part of him that's still aware, still there, kind of watching his own descent. I mean, it makes you wonder, right? Is there a struggle going on somewhere deep down? Like a battle for his soul?
Okay, so he's with these blackened forms, and then the descent begins, this journey through the blue vein tunnels. The descriptions are so vivid, it's almost unsettling. They talk about this dense electric air, the spores that are clinging to him.
The tunnels, the way they're described, I almost feel like it's like a physical manifestation of his psychological journey, don't you think? Like deeper and deeper into the island, further away from everything he once was.
Yeah, totally. And then, I mean, remember that part where he almost gives in? He wants to lick the blue from the stone? Like, what is that all about? It's disturbing and fascinating at the same time.
Well, it definitely speaks to the seductive nature of the island's corruption.
Right.
It's not just a force, it's like a temptation, maybe a promise of escape of some kind from the
Right.
burdens of being, well, conscious, self-aware, all that.
And just when you think it can't get any weirder, we have this really sudden shift. He comes out of the tunnel and he finds himself looking over this huge crater. It's described as like this vast wound in the earth.
The crater. It's a visual metaphor, don't you think? So powerful, like feelings of destruction, something, I don't know, broken, violated, almost like the island itself is wounded, corrupted right to its core. I'm curious, what stood out to you about that scene?
Yeah, well, it's the light, coming from this abyss at the bottom of the crater. They call it a wrong and waiting light. Ugh, it just feels like the source of all the island's darkness, doesn't it?
Totally. And just when you think things couldn't get any creepier, the master's voice, it appears. But not from outside. No, it's from inside Travis himself. Inside his bones, it says.
I know. It's seriously chilling, right? It just highlights that loss of autonomy. He's not in control anymore.
Yeah.
He's just become this vessel for the master's will. It's creepy.
Yeah. And you know what makes it even more tragic? We see him literally being pushed into this abyss, and he doesn't even fight back. No scream, no struggle, nothing.
I know. It's like he's already accepted his fate at that point.
Right.
But what really gets me is the transformation itself. It's just so grotesque. His body contorting, skin stretching, and underneath it describes this black writhes. I mean, he's become something inhuman at this point.
The imagery that the author uses, so powerful. I don't know, it suggests that the transformation isn't just physical, it's something deeper.
And it gets worse, right? Because then he's presented with these like three really messed up options. He's just gone through this horrible transformation. His body's all messed up. And they ask him, Travis, where should we start?
It's almost like they're presenting him with this really twisted menu of options for his new purpose. Like each choice is a window into the master's plan and just how deeply Travis is, well, trapped.
Okay, so option one is hunt for Jim. Talk about kicking a guy when he's down.
Yeah.
Jim, the guy who tried to warn Travis, stood by him through thick and thin, and now he's the enemy.
It's cruel, isn't it? Like the master's saying, to truly be a part of us, you have to erase your past, even the people who cared about you.
It's like, okay, you've been transformed, you're one of us now, but to prove your loyalty, you have to destroy the people from your past. It's heartbreaking, especially when you remember how close Travis and Jim were.
Totally. It just shows how there's no room for individuality here. It's not enough for Travis to give in. Everyone has to follow the same path.
Right, right. Okay, what about option two? Rescue the lost brother. This one, I don't know, when I first read it, it almost seemed noble. Like maybe there's some kind of twisted sense of, I don't know, community among these corrupted beings.
I get what you're saying, like this messed up sense of belonging. But when you look closer, I don't think this rescue is about helping anyone.
So you're saying no happy family reunion.
I doubt it. This lost brother is probably another person who's been transformed, just another pawn for the master to use. This rescue might be about forcing them back into the fold, making the group of corrupted beings even stronger.
Okay, and then there's option three. This one's super vague, but also the creepiest. Stop the most powerful enemy. Who are they talking about? What could possibly be a threat to the master?
I know. It's the one that raises the most questions. Like, is this enemy another survivor, someone who's fighting back against the island? Or is it something bigger, something even more powerful?
Right. Maybe it's some kind of otherworldly entity, like another powerful being on this island, and they're fighting for control. But even if this most powerful enemy is a good guy, in this scenario, Travis is definitely on the wrong side.
Exactly. He's become this weapon, a tool to be used against anything that the master sees as a threat. And that's what makes Travis's story so sad. All the things that made him a survivor, his strength, his logic, have been twisted and turned against him.
It's like a messed up hero story, right?
Yeah.
Instead of overcoming obstacles and doing good, he's given in to the darkness and is now spreading it. And what's worse, he thinks he's choosing this path freely.
I know, right? It's that loss of control that's the most disturbing. Believing you're in control when you're really just a puppet.
So where does this leave Travis? What about the other survivors? They're still out there trying to make it on this crazy island.
Well, these three options, they're like three different paths for Travis. And each path, has its own set of consequences. And those consequences, they're going to affect everyone on the island.
It's like every choice, every little thing he does, it has the power to change everything, right?
Right. That's what makes Survive the Island so gripping, Choices have consequences, and you never know how they're going to play out.
All right, let's jump right back into Survive the Island.
Okay.
We're picking up in Chapter 9. You asked for this.
Oh, yeah.
And for Jordan, Chris, and Andrea, well, their paths are about to collide. Big time.
Each of them facing a crucible. I love that the author did this. Really put them through it with these choices, with the stakes so high. Like, it just pushes them to the edge.
Oh, totally. And let's start with Jordan, yeah. Our cautious guy, always strategic, weighing the risks, never really wanting to just jump in with everybody else.
Yeah, he's always kind of been on the outside looking in.
Right. But now, in this chapter, he's got to accept this transfer of power from Chris,
Yeah.
and it is not pretty.
Oh, no, not your average handshake, It's almost violent, this connection, parasitic even, like it's burrowing into Jordan,
Yeah.
Not just about strength, it changes him, like fundamentally. And the author, those internal voices he gives Jordan, oh man, they're just unsettling.
Super unsettling, and they're constantly whispering to him stuff like, you were never meant to follow.
Yeah.
It's almost as if the island itself is like, trying to turn him into somebody else, someone darker.
I know. And it feels like the island, it has this awareness of him, like it's been watching him this whole time, waiting for this exact moment.
Oh, for sure. It makes you wonder, right?
Yeah.
Is he going to be able to escape this influence?
Mhm.
Or, is he going to become another Chris?
It's like the island's playing chess and Jordan's like, one of the pieces being moved around the board.
Totally. And the more power he gets, the louder those voices become.
Yeah, and you just really start to worry for him, like, can he hold on to himself?
You really do. And on top of all that, his senses are all heightened.
Oh, yeah, everything's turned up to 11.
Everything.
Yeah.
Like, he sees details he never noticed before. He can feel the pulse of the island. So what will he do? With all this amplified power and awareness,
Yeah.
will he choose to fight with Chris? Embrace that darkness?
Or will he resist,
Right.
try to break free from Chris and go his own way? And then you have Andrea, whose journey's been totally different. She didn't fight the island or grab for power. She surrendered to it, like a swimmer letting the current just carry them.
Yeah.
And doing that, she's gained this deep connection, almost like symbiotic,
Yeah, it's like she's tapped into something primal, something ancient, like when she climbs the waterfall. It wasn't a struggle at all. It was more like a flow, like the water was lifting her, taking her right where she needed to be.
Exactly. And when she gets to the top, she immediately senses something's off about Chris's power.
Yeah.
Like she can see it, the corruption, the damage it's doing.
Right. And it's a total contrast to Chris's approach, which has always been about control, forcing the island to do what he wants.
Andrea gets it, though. Yeah.
She understands that true power, it comes from working with the island, not against it.
Totally. But we got to be real. Chris is a tough opponent. He's totally embraced that power, and he's not afraid to use it. And he sees the island as his, something he owns, something he's got to protect. So when Andrea shows up, challenging all that, oh, man, it's about to explode.
For sure. And poor Jordan, stuck in the middle of this whole power struggle.
Oh, no.
He's connected to Chris, feels that pull towards the dark side.
Yeah.
But he also sees what Chris is doing, what it costs. I mean, Jordan's seeing the consequences of all this ambition, and it's got to be making him think twice about everything.
Absolutely. It really makes you think.
Yeah.
What would you do, right?
I don't know. It's a tough one.
So many tough choices.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the author's setting up this huge moral dilemma, isn't it?
Oh, totally.
Forcing Jordan to choose between, like, two completely different paths. I mean, on one hand, he could just go all in.
Yeah. Embrace the power that Chris is offering. Become his right-hand man and try to rule the island just through brute force.
Right. It's tempting.
It is tempting.
You know, that classic, like, power corrupts thing.
Right.
And we've seen it so many times. In history, in books, even in our own lives.
Yeah.
But can he hold on to who he is if he goes down that road?
Yeah, that's the question.
Will he become a tyrant just like Chris? Or is there a way, maybe, he can use it for good?
Is there a way? I don't know.
I don't know. It's a tough one.
It's a tough one. And then you think about the other option, right?
Yeah.
He rejects Chris, tries to break that link, maybe even teams up with Andrea.
Yeah.
But breaking free from that kind of power, It's got to be so hard. Like, trying to quit a bad habit that's just a part of you now.
Exactly. And remember, he's already feeling the effects of it.
Yeah.
His senses are heightened. He's hearing those voices. He could totally lose himself in the process. It would take so much willpower to break free, especially with Chris constantly trying to pull him back in.
Oh, yeah. Chris is not going to let go easily. So it's like this tug of war for Jordan's soul, you know?
It's,
Chris pulling him towards the darkness. Andrea, maybe a glimmer of hope, a chance for redemption.
yeah.
And you can't forget the island itself, right? It's like it's playing its own game, manipulating things, pushing these characters towards something.
It's like the island's another character in this story. Beautiful, but terrifying.
Yes,
Capable of anything. And it feels like it has a plan for each of them, whether they realize it or not.
a plan. And it makes you wonder, like, what would happen if Jordan did break free?
Yeah.
Could he and Andrea actually take Chris down?
It wouldn't be easy, that's for sure.
No.
Chris is strong, he's ruthless, and he's really good at using the island's power. But Andrea, she has her own connection to the island, right?
Yeah.
And hers seems more natural, or in tune with the island.
Right. It's like she's figured out how to tap into the island's life force.
Yeah.
While Chris is just draining it,
Yeah.
using it up for himself.
Right, exactly. Chris sees that path of ambition, just wanting control.
Yeah.
Andrea is more spiritual,
Yeah.
more about harmony. And Jordan's caught right in the middle, just trying to figure out his own way, find some balance.
And it all leads to that huge confrontation, Chris and Andrea. It's not just a fight. It's like a clash of philosophies, two totally different ways of being.
The way the author describes it is just, it's amazing,
I know.
Chris's power is like this crackling static, chaotic, and destructive, while Andrea's control of the water is so fluid and responsive, almost graceful.
It's beautiful.
It is.
And Jordan, just standing there in the middle of it all, that link between him and Chris, pulsing with dark energy, it's so tense. And you know that whatever he decides, it's going to have a huge impact on everybody.
It's like a point of no return,
Yeah.
Everything's on the line. It sucks you in,
It does. Okay, let's play what if for a second. All right.
Okay.
What if Jordan goes full dark side, joins Chris? How do you think that fight would go down?
Well, together they'd be incredibly powerful, especially with that link boosting them. But the island, it always has a few tricks up its sleeve.
Yeah.
It's not just a source of power, it has its own will.
Oh, yeah, and Andrea's connection, it's so deep, almost like she can read the island's mind.
Yeah.
She's not just controlling the water, she's working with it, letting it guide her.
Totally, like those martial arts masters who use their opponent's strength against them.
Exactly. So even with Jordan on his side, Chris might not win.
It's definitely not a sure thing. The island's full of surprises, and Andrea is not someone to underestimate.
Okay, let's flip it around. What if Jordan breaks free from Chris and teams up with Andrea? What are their chances of taking Chris down together?
That would be epic, for sure, like a battle for the island's soul. Chris, with all that power he's got, he's a tough opponent.
Yeah.
And Jordan, even if he breaks free, he's still going to be fighting that darkness inside him.
So much pressure.
It's a lot. But there's strength in unity, right?
Yeah.
If Jordan and Andrea can combine their powers, their knowledge of the island, they might just have a shot, but it'd be a tough win.
Yeah.
A testament to willpower, resilience, and believing in something bigger than themselves.
And wouldn't that be a powerful message?
Yeah.
Even in the face of all this darkness, there's still hope.
Absolutely.
A chance to choose a different path.
A reminder that we can change, that we can grow, that we can fight for something better.
Okay, last what if, before we move on, what if Jordan decides, I want it all, and tries to take down both Chris and Andrea? Could he actually pull it off?
That's the wild card, isn't it?
Yeah.
If he could somehow take control of their powers, he'd be the strongest one on the island.
He'd be unstoppable.
But at what cost?
Yeah, because he'd be alone.
Right. Completely alone, no allies, no one to trust, just him and all that power.
Lonely at the top.
Exactly.
So he might win, but lose himself along the way.
Yeah, it's a real possibility. It's a cautionary tale, about how seductive power can be.
Yeah.
And how important it is to stay true to who you are, even when it's tempting to do otherwise.
So many twists and turns, so many possibilities. It's what keeps us coming back to survive the island.
Yeah.
It's not just the action, it's the choices, the consequences, those deep questions about power, corruption, what it means to be human.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're diving back into Survive the Island today.
Back into the thick of it.
Yeah. Specifically 16 days. This is Chapter 9, Part 4.
Ooh, getting intense.
It is getting pretty intense. We're picking up with Jim, Mayo, and Claudia right where we left off, and as they're trekking deeper into the jungle.
Agree.
And really, one of the things that struck me the most is just how the island's influence, it's like it's evolved.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just those creepy whispers anymore.
Yeah, we're way past that.
Yeah. I mean, now think about Mayo's unsettling silence, right?
Mhm.
Like those whispers stop, but she doesn't feel that relief that you'd expect. There's this emptiness, and it's almost creepier.
It's definitely unsettling. And it really does suggest, like you said, that the island has this deeper hold now. Like it's burrowed into their minds somehow.
Ugh, yeah. It's like it broke them down with the whispers, and now something else is moving in.
Right. Like what comes next?
Yeah, exactly. And Claudia, she says it best, right?
Mm.
She's terrified. She's been on the island for 16 days,
Mm.
which is way longer than Jim and Mayo at this point.
Oh, yeah. She's a veteran in this game.
Right. And she keeps talking about turning into something else.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that fear she has, it really gets under your skin
Hmm.
because she's seen it.
Oh, absolutely. She's seen what happens, and that fear just highlight how insidious this sickness is. And she doesn't even really define it.
No.
We don't know how it spreads. We don't know what it looks like, really.
Right. We just know it's bad.
But just the way Claudia is clinging to who she is, it's like, it's a gradual thing,
Right.
It erodes your identity, like this corruption from the inside out.
Ugh. Chilling.
Yeah.
Chilling. And it makes her insistence on reaching this waterfall, it makes it even more fascinating.
Oh, yeah. Like she's holding on to this waterfall for dear life.
Right. She keeps talking about it as a refuge, a sanctuary.
Yeah.
Do you think the water, literally protects her?
I mean, there's definitely an element of faith there, right?
Yeah.
In Claudia's belief. Like she even mentions trying to help this other player, Jordan.
Oh, yeah, Jordan.
But he runs away before she can get him to the waterfall.
Right. Okay, so let's rewind back to day 1.
Yeah.
Claudia wakes up on this strange beach, and it's clear right away that this isn't your typical deserted island. The sand is burning hot, the sun feels oddly still.
Right.
And while the other survivors rush off to explore the wreckage, Claudia kind of hangs back.
It's almost like she instinctively senses the danger. And she's spot on because the sources mention that some of those who went exploring came back different. Changed somehow, and some didn't even come back at all.
Yeah, talk about creepy.
Yeah, it's like the island itself is a force, and it's not exactly a benevolent one.
Right.
But Claudia, she's all about observation instead of jumping into the unknown.
So she's cautious.
Yeah, very cautious.
All right, so this brings us to day 5.
Okay.
And this is where things get really scary.
Oh.
The sources describe Claudia like running into this monstrous creature.
Oh, wow.
We don't really get a clear picture of what it looks like, but they really emphasize this raw, primal fear it evokes in Claudia.
Right.
And that fear just completely drives her to run, to flee for her life. She finds this hidden waterfall,
Okay.
like a sanctuary that offers her this sense of peace, a reprieve from the island's darkness.
Yeah, and you would think that would be the end of it, right? She's found a safe haven, believing she's the only survivor. And then she starts hearing this disembodied voice.
Okay, chills. What does the voice say?
It's described as soft, but deeply unsettling.
Oh.
The voice speaks in riddles talking about Claudia's purpose on the island, the importance of choice,
Okay.
and about a deadline, a looming deadline.
It's like someone or something is orchestrating everything,
Right.
setting these survivors on this predetermined path.
And that sense of being controlled, of being manipulated, just feeds into Claudia's feelings of helplessness and inaction.
Right, so she's all alone, haunted by this voice and trapped in this place that feels dangerous and inescapable.
Exactly, until day 15 when another survivor stumbles upon her sanctuary,
Okay.
a guy named Jordan.
And this is huge, right?
Yeah.
Because it mirrors Claudia's own arrival on the island.
Yeah.
She was alone, disoriented,
Right.
and now she's confronted with someone going through the exact same thing.
Exactly. But instead of offering comfort or support, this encounter just triggers Claudia's instinct to run.
So we're seeing this pattern here: fear, isolation, and flight.
And this pattern, this sickness, if you will, becomes a huge element of Claudia's time on the island before the present-day players arrive.
So we've got this foundation of fear, this sense of being trapped both physically and mentally. But how does this all connect to the present-day situation, to this battle at the waterfall? They arrive, and instead of peace, it's full-on battle, Yeah. 3 figures, they're glowing. And the visuals in the game, they really add to it,
Oh, absolutely. The glowing auras, these distorted figures, it just screams otherworldly power, you know?
Right. I mean, you got a woman radiating this red energy. You've
Yeah.
got this, like, monstrous man with this blue aura.
Okay, wait, stop right there.
Yeah.
Mayo, what does she do?
Oh yeah. She calls them her brothers, right? It's so creepy.
That's what I'm saying. Like, where did that come from?
Right. And she's never even seen these people before.
Exactly.
Yep.
But she feels this connection, instant bond.
Right, like it's primal or something.
Brr.
It's intriguing, but it's so disturbing.
Totally. Do you think it's the island messing with her? It's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah. I mean, the whispers have stopped, so maybe the island's found a new way in, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And then to make things even more complicated, Claudia recognizes the blue glowing man.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it's Jordan, the player she's trying to help.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, she regrets not getting him to the waterfall.
So she thinks the water could have helped.
Right. And why did Jordan run from her in the first place? So many questions.
So many questions. The scene is like a puzzle box.
Totally. And then you have Jim, right? He's just watching all this unfold.
Jim's the outsider here.
Right. I mean, he doesn't have that history with the island that Claudia has.
And he doesn't have that connection, whatever it is that Mayo feels.
He just sees these figures as a threat.
Well, yeah, they're glowing and fighting. It makes sense.
Right. But it's really interesting to compare his perspective to theirs.
Absolutely. Like 3 different lenses on this crazy situation.
Yeah. And then boom, chapter ends. Cliffhanger.
Classic survive the island.
Right. And they're left with these 5 choices. Protect the glowing woman.
Okay.
Assist the monstrous man. Try to stop the fight peacefully.
Good luck with that.
Right. Get to the waterfall and bathe in it. Or escape into the jungle.
Wow. Talk about a tough decision.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, each of these options, they carry so much weight. We need to break this down. Jim, he's still focused on keeping himself and his friends safe.
Right. Practical Jim.
Yeah. So he might want to escape or maybe try to talk things out. But I mean, come on, can you really see Chris and Andrea sitting down for a nice chat?
Yeah, not likely. Chris wants control, and Andrea's in the middle of a battle.
Right. So much for diplomacy. And then there's Mayo.
Oh, Mayo. This connection is driving everything for her.
It's either a genuine bond or the island playing her right.
Well, exactly. We don't know for sure yet.
But if it's real and she sees Chris as hurting her brothers, I mean, wow.
Yeah, she might actually try to protect Andrea, even if it means fighting.
Well, what if the island's manipulating her?
Oh, then she could end up siding with Chris, just another pawn in his game.
That's terrifying. And Claudia, she would never let that happen.
Yeah, but what can she do?
She's already lost people to this island. She has to protect Mayo. She sees that waterfall as their only hope.
Right.
But is it a real solution or just, like, hiding?
Yeah, it's prioritizing safety, but it doesn't deal with the bigger problem.
Right. It's like ignoring a giant monster that's outside your door, you know?
Right. And then there's Jordan.
What about him?
Claudia knows him. She knows he's in trouble. But would she really leave him behind to protect Mayo?
It's a tough choice.
Yeah.
Like, who do you save?
It's the dark side of survival, right? Sometimes you got to make impossible choices. And does the waterfall even really work?
Right. What if it's just a temporary fix?
The island's always changing. They can't just hide there forever.
No, the island's going to find them. So the waterfall, it's a gamble, a delay tactic. Okay, last option, run away. Escape into the jungle.
Go back to what works, right?
Right, they've done it before.
Yeah.
But this time, I don't know.
It's the easy way out, for now. But the jungle's not safe either. There are other dangers out there.
Yeah, and they're not really solving anything, just avoiding it.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg, you know?
And all that running, it could mess them up too. Mentally, I mean.
Oh, totally. It makes you feel powerless, like you're not in control. And what about their bond?
Yeah, they need to stick together.
Exactly. Running could rip them apart, leave them vulnerable. So yeah, we've got these 5 choices. Protect Andrea, help Chris, make peace, the waterfall, run away. It's like the island is testing them. And there are no right answers. It's about making the best choice you can with what you know and then living with it. And that's, I think, what makes this so compelling.
Chapter 9, Part 5.
Okay.
When you see too much, just to refresh everybody's memory, we've got Bryan, who, you know, after all these betrayals and weirdness on the island, he's just clinging to logic and control as his survival strategy. Right?
Yeah, totally.
But then Rosendo just drops this bomb on him and locks him out of the bunker after Bryan's trying to help him.
Right, after everything they've been through together, you would think Rosendo would at least hear him out.
Right. Exactly.
Hmm.
And, it's really interesting because we see Brian going through this huge emotional shift.
Totally.
Like he's hurt, he's angry, and then he has that super creepy encounter with that earth flesh figure, whatever that is.
Oh, I know. That scene was terrifying. It was just dripping with psychological horror. And I think it really highlights how the island is pressing on everyone, even Brian, who is usually so logical, right? Like it's messing with their heads,
Oh, absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
getting under their skin.
It really is. And the way that creature just kind of oozes out of the island and offers Brian this acceptance. And it talks about feeding its hunger. So creepy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
But Brian, he doesn't back down. He doesn't freak out. He attacks the thing.
he does.
It's like all of his rage and frustration, all that loss of control is channeled into this really, really intense, almost primal moment of dominance.
And I think, you mentioned the language the creature uses. It's very deliberate. The creature doesn't offer Brian power. It offers him a merging, a transfer.
Yeah.
Like it wants to kind of like, I don't know, slip into him and feed off of him. And, it suggests this really, really unsettling parasitic relationship, right? Like Brian's anger is fuel for this thing. And in return, he gets this connection to the island, this awareness that feels, I don't know, almost supernatural, right?
It's wild because it's not even just awareness. It's this feeling of dominion over the island.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he talks about sensing the pulse of the island, the creatures moving around him. It's like he's plugged into this network.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
But, and there's always a but, right? The sense of control, it seems to come at a huge cost.
Oh, absolutely.
We see this really drastic shift in his personality. He's colder, more ruthless, not the same Brian we knew before.
That makes me wonder, what's he going to do with all this new power, What's it going to turn him into?
Right. And that's where it gets really interesting because at the end of part 5, Brian is faced with these 3 choices. And each one of them reflects this darker, kind of scary turn that he's taken.
Okay, so what are his options?
All right. So option number 1, confront Rosendo.
Interesting.
And we could just brush that off as revenge, right?
Yeah, it seems like that on the surface.
Yeah, but I think it's deeper than that. It's about Brian trying to reclaim control
Right.
in this situation where he felt totally powerless.
Makes sense. Okay, what's next?
Now remember, Ian has been observing everything from a distance, right? And Brian, with his newfound senses, he knows someone's out there.
You can feel him lurking.
Exactly. And this choice, to me, it just screams paranoia, aggression. Like it's not just about eliminating a threat. It's like Brian's trying to send a message.
Right, like, don't even try me.
Exactly. Like, don't even try me. And this sets up this super interesting power dynamic between Brian and Ian because Ian, he's always been cautious, observant, right? Like he's used to operating from the shadows.
He blends into the background.
Exactly. But now Brian, with his new power, it's like he's dragging Ian into the light.
That's such a good point, yeah. And it makes his situation so much more dangerous.
Right. And then there's option 3, and this one is kind of the wild card, I think, to venture deeper into the jungle and explore this newfound power.
Ooh, yeah.
It's like he's drawn to the mystery of it all, the potential of what he can control.
It's like a moth to a flame.
And in this case, I think what Brian could find out there, it could be way more terrifying than anything he's encountered so far.
Especially with this new darkness kind of, clouding his judgment. It's like, what if this power is changing him in ways that he doesn't even realize yet?
Right. What if the island is using him?
Exactly. Oh, I have chills.
And then we've got Rosendo, whose journey in this chapter takes, I don't know, such a dark turn.
Yeah, he really went to a dark place.
Yeah, we've seen him so driven by suspicion and a need to be in control. Like, he's convinced that if he just gets enough information.
Right, knowledge is power.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. But this whole thing, this whole quest for information, it leads him down a really, really dangerous path.
It does. And I think his story, this chapter is a great example of like the potential pitfalls of that kind of thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like he isolates himself in the bunker, convinced he's going to outsmart the island. He's going to figure out all the secrets.
Yeah, like he can hack his way out of the situation.
Yeah, but that isolation, it just feeds his paranoia.
It does, and then things get so creepy in the lab, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's hearing these noises, he sees movement, but there's nothing actually there.
Right, like the bunker's playing tricks on him.
It is. It's like the bunker itself has messed with him.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's where the psychological horror that element, it really kicks in.
Right. Like, it's not just a physical threat, the island.
Yeah.
It's a psychological one, right?
It is. It preys on their vulnerabilities.
It does.
And Rosendo's, his biggest vulnerability is his need for control.
Yes, totally. And then finally, the computer boots up. But instead of getting the answers he's looking for, he's bombarded with all these disturbing images, like fragments of the island's history.
Flashes.
Yeah, flashes of the other players. It's just sensory overload.
It is. Like, it breaks him, you know?
It does. It totally shatters his mental state.
It's interesting because you have Bryan, who embraces this more primal form of power, something that is just instinctual and unchecked by logic. And then you have Rosendo, who is so obsessed with knowledge that it literally destroys him.
Right. It's like his quest for knowledge backfires in the worst way possible.
It does.
And just when you think it can't get any worse for this guy, he realizes he is not alone.
Oh, God, no.
There's something else in the lab, something that has been watching him this whole time.
Ugh, the chills. I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
I know. Talk about a terrifying situation.
He's vulnerable.
He is. He's mentally and physically vulnerable, trapped with who knows what. And it's like the weight of everything he's seeing is just crushing down on him.
It's like the island is punishing him for trying to learn its secrets.
Yeah, it really is. And his choices at this point, they just scream loss of control.
Right. So what can he do?
So option one, run.
Okay.
Just a primal instinct,
Yeah.
right? Just get away from the danger.
Yeah, get out of there.
But I think it really shows how deeply shaken he is. Like, knowledge has taken a back seat to just straight up survival.
Oh, for sure. It shows how desperate he is. Yeah.
Right. And then option two is even more unsettling. Confront the figure.
What? Why would he do that?
I know, but I think it speaks to this kind of desperate hope that maybe, just maybe this creature, whatever it is, holds some kind of answer, like a way to make sense of everything.
So he's still clinging to the idea that knowledge is the key, even when he's terrified.
Right. It's like this core belief that if he just understands what's happening, he can regain control.
It makes sense. Yeah, I can see that.
But it is such a gamble. What if this thing is hostile? What if it's like the source of the island's corruption, the very thing he should be running from?
Yeah, that's a good point. It could be super dangerous.
Right. And then option three is try the computer again.
Oh, God, no. Are you kidding me?
I know he's been so traumatized by what he saw, but there's a part of him that just can't let go.
He has to know more.
He does. There's this allure of the unknown, the potential of finding a way out, maybe.
It's like a twisted addiction.
It is. Like he knows this information could completely break him,
Right.
but he can't resist.
It's like he needs that hit, you know?
He does. So there we have it. 3 characters, all pushed to their absolute limits by this island.
By the psychological torture.
Exactly. Bryan's embracing this dark power. Ian is forced out of his comfort zone, and Rosendo's just grappling with the consequences of his quest for knowledge.
You can see how Bryan's new power could totally, like, just disrupt the group dynamic, you know? Like, is he going to use it to manipulate the others, you know? Will he turn into some kind of, like, island dictator, or will he actually find a way to use it to help the group, you know? Like, we have no idea.
And what about Ian? Like, is this the moment that he finally steps out of the shadows and becomes more active? He's always been watching, gathering information, but now he has to make a move. Like, will this be the moment he becomes a leader? Or will he just freeze up?
Right, exactly. And I think a lot of it depends on what happens with Bryan, right? Like if Bryan goes full on, you know, power hungry, it might force Ian to step up and try to protect the others.
Yeah. And we can't count out Rosendo, right? Like if he even survives this encounter in the lab.
Oh, yeah, he's a wild card for sure.
He is. He's got all this knowledge, even if it's kind of messed up and disturbing, right? Like, is he going to try to use it to regain some kind of control, maybe even try to manipulate everyone else?
That's a really good question. I mean, he's definitely shown that he's willing to do whatever it takes to survive, right?
Oh, yeah, he has.
So it wouldn't surprise me if he tried to use this knowledge to his advantage.
Right. There are just so many possibilities.
So many.
Above the waterfall. Huge turning point for Mike in this one.
Definitely. I'd say one of the most visually intense and just thought-provoking parts of the game.
So if you remember, Mike has been struggling with the island's influence, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's had to make some tough choices just to survive. But now he's in this weird dreamlike state. He's watching this huge confrontation happening above the waterfall.
From, like, an out-of-body perspective.
Yeah, totally.
It's wild.
And the waterfall itself, that's like That's a big deal, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And it's interesting because Mike sees a lot of the major players gather there, right?
Yeah.
But in his current state, he doesn't recognize them.
It's trippy.
So we've got Andrea. She's just radiating this golden light.
Mm-hmm.
And she seems to be like manipulating the water itself.
That's right.
It's like she's tapping into something.
Almost like she's controlling it in a way.
Yeah, some kind of primal source of power connected to the island. Then there's Chris. And he's gone through this huge transformation.
Yeah, it's a little creepy, actually.
He's described as like this monstrous figure,
Right.
radiating blue energy.
Clearly corrupted by the island, right?
Yeah.
It's embracing its power, but losing himself in the process.
Yeah, I think his transformation is like a prime example of how the island can twist people, physically and mentally.
Totally. And the blue glow, it's often associated with players who give in to the islanders' whispers, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're embracing the power, but at a huge cost.
At a huge cost, yeah.
Their own humanity.
Exactly. And then there's Jordan. He's caught between Andrea and Chris.
Like physically in between them?
Yeah, like right in the middle.
And his blue glow is flickering.
It's so uncertain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's torn.
Torn between these two forces.
Yeah, like struggling to find his own path.
Yeah, I love how the flickering glow, like, visually shows his internal struggle.
Mm.
You know, it's clever. The game is communicating his state of mind without actually saying anything.
Yeah, exactly. Without dialogue, without exposition, you just see it.
It's really effective.
And then it's not just these three. Okay?
Yeah.
We have three more characters who come into the scene, and they each have their own unique relationship to the island's power.
Okay, lay it on me.
So there's Claudia, and she's like emanating this growing inner light. Almost like she's becoming more and more in tune with the island.
It's interesting. Claudia's light is like the opposite of Chris's blue glow.
Right.
Like maybe the island's influence isn't always bad.
Right.
Maybe some people, like Claudia, can actually evolve in a good way.
Interesting.
Like harness the island's power for good, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point. And then there's Jim. He's described as being completely untouched by any glow. So he's an anomaly in this crazy, energized environment.
It makes you wonder, is he immune to the island somehow? Or is there something else going on that we just don't understand yet?
It's a huge question mark.
Huge question mark.
And then finally we have Mayo, and her form is like flickering.
Oh, no.
Her light's unstable.
Not good.
Yeah, it's as if she's fighting so hard against the island's control, you know?
Yeah.
Like desperately trying to hold on to who she is.
You know, Mayo's struggle, it's really powerful because it shows how vulnerable people are in the face of something so big and powerful.
Mm-hmm.
The island's influence, it can be really tempting. It promises you power, it promises you knowledge, but it comes at a price.
Oh, yeah.
And Mayo's flickering form is like this visual reminder of that constant battle.
Wow. It's like each of these characters is showing us a different way that someone can react to the island.
Yeah.
You know, some embrace it.
Yeah. Some resist it.
Some are trying to walk that line in between.
It's fascinating.
And as they all come together at the waterfall, the tension is just...
Palpable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, and then a scream.
Oh.
Mike describes it as more than just a sound, but like a force.
Whoa.
Something that shakes the foundation of the island itself.
That's intense. And this is where things get really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
The scream, it like impacts everyone who's there.
Everyone.
Even Light.
He feels it, even though he's in this spectral form, and it affects everyone differently. Chris, the blue glowing monster, he recoils in pain.
Oh, wow.
While Andrea, with the golden light, she actually seems empowered by it.
Interesting.
Like they're drawing on opposite sources, and this scream is like tipping the balance.
It's almost like the scream is this kind of test, you know? It reveals the nature of each character's connection to the island.
Oh, I see.
The ones who are aligned with the darker forces, like Chris, they get weaker. But the ones who are in harmony with it, like Andrea, they get stronger.
And then there's Mayo.
Oh, Mayo.
She's been struggling to resist the island's influence, and she just collapses under the force of this scream.
Like her whole being is being torn apart.
It's really hard to watch, honestly, but it shows how powerful the island is. But then you have Claudia, with her growing inner light. She remains totally steadfast during this whole scream thing.
Interesting.
It's like she's found a way to tap into the island's energy without being consumed by it.
Maybe there's hope.
And then, of course, there's Jim, our guy with no glow at all.
Yeah, what's up with him?
He's totally unfazed by the scream.
Wow.
just standing there, a total enigma. And then, just like that, the dream starts to fade, and Mike's left with a choice to make.
Oh, this is where it gets good.
This is where the chapter really kicks it up a notch. Mike is battling the elements, sure, but he's also battling the island itself.
It's like the island's testing him.
It really is. Like
Right.
it's trying to break him. The different colors of light, those flickering forms, that scream that shakes the whole island.
It all adds to the feeling of, like, unease.
Right.
Like you're caught in something way bigger than yourself.
Exactly.
Mike's choices, they aren't made in a vacuum.
Right.
They affect other players. They can shift alliances, change the entire course of the game.
What Mike does next, it could have huge consequences.
Oh, yeah.
Not just for him, but for everyone on the island.
For the fate of the island itself.
Exactly. So as we leave Mike at this crossroads, facing these 4 massive choices, I think we're all feeling the anticipation.
Yeah.
What's going to happen next? Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Chapter 9, Part 7, titled Not Dead Yet, which picks up right where we left off.
Yeah, this section's super interesting because we're actually getting the perspectives of Boon, Cowin, and Andrew,
Right.
all 3 of them dealing with the fallout of some pretty crazy stuff.
For sure. Last time we saw Boon, he was getting pulled under the sand by those creepy black hands after trying to help Mayo.
Oh, man.
This part of the chapter really takes the psychological horror to a whole other level.
Totally. The source material describes Boon's experience under the sand, and it is so vivid.
Oh, yeah.
It talks about the hands smelling of rot and decay, pulling him deeper and deeper,
Yes.
while the sand, almost acting like water, gives him no way to fight back.
Wild.
And then, of course, there are the voices.
Ugh. Don't even get me started on those voices. They're just constantly taunting him, bringing up all his past choices and what happened to other players.
Right, like the island itself is just like
Yeah.
preying on his guilt and doubt.
Absolutely. It's such a clever way to amplify the terror.
Yeah.
But it also makes you wonder, what do you think is the source of those voices?
Right.
Is it the island itself or something else entirely? And remember, all this is happening while Cowin and Andrew are watching helplessly from the shore.
Oh, yeah. They must have been terrified.
Totally. They had just escaped that crazy encounter with the shark, thinking they were finally safe.
Right. They see Boon fighting those hands, but they're just too far away to help.
Yes.
And then, when the sand settles, it's like Boon was never there.
That is so creepy. The island just erasing any trace of him makes it feel even more unreal.
Definitely. And the silence that follows.
Yeah.
Almost worse than those voices.
Yeah.
They're so used to the island mocking them, but now it's just quiet.
Talk about a recipe for paranoia.
Mm-hmm.
They immediately start digging, hoping to find Boon,
Oh, yeah.
but it's all for nothing.
Their search just emphasizes how helpless and desperate they are.
Right.
They even start to question if what they saw even really happened.
Which, let's be honest, is exactly what the island wants them to think.
Absolutely. Thriving on confusion and doubt.
But just when they're about to give up hope, this scream echoes across the island.
Right, and not just any scream, it's full of rage.
Yeah, like something's declaring war.
Like the whole balance of power on the island is shifting.
Absolutely. And then, to make things even crazier, 3 lights appear.
3.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we have this pulse of red light.
Yeah.
So now the question is this red light danger? Or is it a potential way out? Or maybe both.
Hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
But it definitely adds another layer of mystery to the whole situation.
Totally. And then there's this flicker of blue light near the fire where we last saw Jordanna.
Oh, right, Jordanna.
Makes you wonder if it's really her or something else trying to, like, mimic her light.
Ooh, that's a good point.
And if 2 mysterious lights weren't enough, there's also a soft blue glow coming from the sand where Cowin's digging.
What? No way.
Yeah, and this is where things get really wild. Boon reappears, pulled from the sand by Cowin and Andrew.
Oh, wow. What a moment.
Right, pure relief after all that tension and terror. But it also shows that the island is playing with them.
For sure, messing with their emotions.
I can only imagine. One minute you think your friend is gone forever, and the next he's back covered in sand.
Yeah, and there's another detail here. Those voices, they come back as Boon emerges, but they're not taunting anymore.
Oh, no.
They're screaming, howling in, like, anguish and rage.
It's almost like the island itself is in pain.
Right. Or like something's happening to whatever's making those voices.
It definitely feels like something much bigger is going on.
Yeah, it's not just random cruelty anymore.
And then, amidst all the chaos and fear, they laugh.
They laugh.
Yeah, it's like this human moment.
Yeah.
This release of tension after everything they've been through.
Makes sense after all that. Laughter's the only sane response.
Exactly. But the chapter ends on a huge cliffhanger. Boon, Cowin, and Andrew are given 3 choices.
3 choices.
Yeah, each leading down a very different path.
Oh, that's rough.
And these choices are going to test their survival skills and their personalities.
For sure.
They have to decide. Do they follow that crimson light, investigate the fire in that blue light, or follow that terrifying scream? So we have these 3 guys facing 3 very different paths. Like the island is giving them a chance to choose their fate.
It's really interesting how each option kind of reflects a different part of what the island is all about.
Yeah.
The crimson light, the blue light, and the scream.
Yeah.
They each play on a different kind of fear.
A different kind of hope.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's start with the crimson light.
Okay.
That pulse of red. It's like this beacon drawing them towards the unknown.
It represents the possibility of finding answers, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe even a way off the island.
Oh, that's a good point. And it's interesting how this choice plays on Andrew's impulsive nature.
Right. He's drawn to the dramatic, the unknown.
Would he be the one to push for following the crimson light?
He very well could be, but what about Boon and Cowin? How do you think they would react?
I think Boon, with his logical mind, would probably be hesitant. He'd want to weigh the risks, gather more information before jumping into anything.
Makes sense. And Cowin, with his focus on the group, he might be worried about putting everyone in danger.
Right. He wouldn't want to risk their survival.
So choosing the crimson light could actually cause some conflict.
Yeah.
Force them to confront their different approaches to survival.
It's like the island is testing them, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to the second option. Investigating the fire in the blue light. This one feels like it has the most potential for connection.
Yeah. Maybe even finding an ally.
Right, especially with that flicker of blue near the fire.
Yeah.
Could it be Jordanna?
It's possible, or is it something else, you know?
This option really plays on their hope.
Right. Their desire to find another human being out there.
Someone who understands what they're going through.
But it also plays on that fear of being alone.
Right, their need for companionship.
What if they get there and there's no one?
Or worse.
What if there's something they wish they hadn't found?
Yeah. I could see Boon being very cautious about this one.
Yeah, he'd want to be absolutely sure it's safe.
Right, that they're not walking into a trap.
And Cowin, he's always thinking strategically.
Yeah.
He might be wondering how this could help the whole group.
Could connecting with Jordanna give them an advantage in the game?
Exactly. It's so interesting how each of them would approach this from a different angle.
Yeah, weighing different factors.
Okay. And then there's that third option, the one that really creeps me out. Following the scream.
That scream was chilling.
It was full of so much rage and pain.
It makes you wonder what could possibly make a sound like that.
Could be another player in trouble.
Yeah.
Or something way more terrifying.
What if it's the source of the voices?
Oh, wow.
The thing that's been pulling the strings all along.
That's a scary thought.
This option is definitely the riskiest, the most uncertain.
It's like walking straight into the heart of the island's darkness.
But it's also the most intriguing.
Right.
The one most likely to reveal the truth about the island.
I could see Andrew being drawn to this.
With his love of drama.
Yeah. He might see it as a chance to face the island head on.
And Boon, even though he's so logical,
Yeah.
he might be tempted by the potential for answers.
He wants to understand, to make sense of everything that's happening.
What about Cowin? Do you think he would risk everything to follow that scream?
It's tough to say he's a pragmatic leader, but he's also really empathetic.
Yeah.
What if he thinks following the scream is the only way to save someone?
So what do you think, listener? Which path would you choose? Would you follow the crimson light, the hope of the blue light, or the fear of the scream? We're diving deep into Survive the Island, specifically Chapter 9, Part 8.
It's called You Are the Island.
Exactly. And things get, well, kind of crazy for Jill in this one.
Totally. This is where things get really interesting.
It's not just surviving, it's like, whoa, what is even happening?
Yeah.
And the choices she makes.
Oh, the choices.
Yeah, because remember, Jill's not your typical, like, logical survivor.
Right. From the beginning, it's been intuition.
Faith, even.
And that connection to the island itself.
She's been trusting the island when it seems, well, dangerous.
And it's all led her to this point.
To Chapter 9.
A turning point, for sure.
So paint us a picture. What's going on with Jill now?
All right, so picture this. Jill's hidden, watching the beach.
Okay, I'm seeing it.
And this figure appears alone, this man.
Okay.
And then 2 more men show up, but before they reach him, he vanishes. And those 2 other guys are just, like, standing there.
Searching, confused, totally bewildered.
And then...
And out of nowhere, this war cry erupts.
a war cry. From where?
We don't know yet, but it shakes Jill to her core, literally.
Oh, man.
It's not just a sound, it's like a visceral experience.
Whoa.
And this is where it gets really wild.
You are the island.
You got it. So G, like, literally merged with the island.
Well, not in a, like, physical way.
Right.
It's more about how she sees things now.
Like, her perception.
Yeah, the lines between her and the island blur.
So she feels the sand, the waves.
The sun, everything, as part of her.
Wow. Intense.
Right, it changes everything.
So what does this mean for her, practically speaking?
Well, things that mattered before, like escaping,
Right.
fade away. It's not important anymore.
What about the ship's mast? She was focused on that before, right?
Yeah, but now it's just like a toy to her, something she could crush easily.
Wow.
But the blue light, remember that?
Yeah, it was just strange before.
Now it's intensified, it's sinister, threatening.
Like bad.
Yeah, like a parasite, infecting the island.
Oh, that's not good.
So her focus shifts, right? It's not about her survival anymore.
It's about the island's survival.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this broken guy, this war cry, this blue light parasite, a lot going on.
Oh, and those other two men?
Right. What about them?
They actually find the vanished guy, rescue him somehow.
No way they do.
Yeah, but it's still creepy, like something's off about the whole thing.
I wonder why.
So here's the big question. What does the island want Jill to do?
Right. It's not just her journey anymore.
It's tied to this island, to its fate. Jill has 4 choices now. 1, she could follow the war cry.
Oh, interesting.
Is it a call for help? A challenge? A trap? We don't know.
That's kind of scary.
It's definitely risky.
Okay, what else?
2, she could destroy the ship's mast.
Oh, wow.
It's a powerful symbol, you know.
Her old life, the past.
Exactly. But is that what the island wants?
Ooh, good question.
Or is she defying it somehow?
Okay, option 3.
She could try to extinguish that blue light.
Get rid of the parasite.
It seems logical, right?
Yeah, like the heroic thing to do.
But what if it backfires? What if that light is important somehow?
Okay, so maybe not.
And finally, she could approach those men on the beach.
Oh, interesting.
They might help. They might have answers.
But they could also be dangerous.
Absolutely. Trusting them is a big risk.
Wow, so each choice is loaded, like, with meaning.
And consequences. This isn't just surviving anymore.
It's about understanding this connection to the island.
And figuring out what role Jill plays in all of this.
This is so complex.
It's what makes it so compelling.
I'm hooked.
Me too.
But before we go, I gotta ask, what does this whole becoming the island thing mean for the game itself?
Ooh, now that's a good question. It makes you think, right? Like, does it have its own goals?
That's crazy. We started talking about Chapter 9, now we're talking about reality itself.
That's the beauty of a deep dive. You never know where it'll take you.
I'm having a blast.
Right.
But we gotta surface sometime, sadly.
Always next time, though.
True. But before we go, I have one final thought.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
What if Jill's not the only one who can merge with the island?
You mean other players, too?
Yeah, like what if everyone can become the island?
Oh, wow. That changes everything. Like a battle for the island's soul.
Exactly.
Mind blown.
Right. All right, so welcome back for another deep dive. And we're going to be taking a look at Jordanna's story.
Okay.
It's called The Cold Inside You.
Oh, that's a great title.
It is a great title, right? Now, this chapter is really interesting because it kind of throws Jordanna into a whole new situation and a whole new kind of problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've seen in previous chapters, she's very pragmatic.
Yeah.
You know, she very carefully considers all of her options.
Right.
She prioritizes survival. She's shown compassion. You know, she helps others even when it puts her at risk.
Mm-hmm.
But she's also willing to make really hard choices.
Like leaving someone behind if it means that she gets to live.
Yeah. I mean, she's a very complex character.
Yes, very much so.
And she's not, you know, just like a straightforward hero or a villain.
Right.
She's really driven by this need to survive, but also this like moral compass. You know, she's trying to do what she thinks is right.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's what makes her so interesting to follow, is that she's not just a one-dimensional character.
Yes.
She's got this depth to her, and that's what I think makes this chapter so compelling, because it really pushes her to the limits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So to set the stage here, you know, after this terrifying encounter with Lauren,
Right.
physically she's okay.
Yeah.
But something's
But something's off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the way the narrative describes this is really effective. It's like
Okay.
all these sensory details that kind of highlight this change.
Right.
Like she should be freezing, right?
Yeah, she was just submerged in, like, ice-cold ocean water.
Yeah.
Exactly, but she doesn't feel the cold at all.
Right.
And even the warmth of the fire doesn't seem to reach her.
Right.
It's like her connection to the physical world has been disrupted somehow.
Yeah. It's almost like she's not fully there.
Yes.
You know, like her body is there, but something
Like
is
it's-
different.
And then she has this realization, which is just horrifying.
Oh my gosh.
Whatever was possessing Lauren is now inside her.
Yeah. Talk about a traumatic experience, right? I mean, you survive this near-death experience,
Right.
and then you realize that the thing that almost killed you is now a part of you.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. That sends chills down my spine just thinking about it.
Yeah, and that alone would be bad enough.
Right.
But then it gets weirder.
Right.
She starts hearing this voice.
Oh, yeah.
This internal voice.
Yeah.
And this voice keeps telling her that she was spared for a reason.
Uh-huh.
She has a job to do.
Right. And we don't really know yet what that purpose is.
Right. It's all very mysterious.
But it's clear that this voice is trying to influence her, you know, to push her towards whatever this goal is.
And you can see how that would just take a toll on someone mentally and emotionally.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine this constant pressure in your head,
Right? Like someone's always whispering in your ear.
pushing you towards something you don't even understand.
Yeah, that's got to be unsettling.
Yeah. And it's so intense that it actually manifests physically.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's suddenly enveloped in this sickly blue light.
Okay. What do you think that symbolizes? I mean, it seems like she's changing.
Yeah, she's becoming something different. Yeah, but is it a good different or a bad different?
Right. Is it a power or a curse or maybe a bit of both?
Right. It's a really good question. And I think it also makes you wonder how this is going to affect her relationships with the other survivors.
Yes.
I mean, trust is such a huge factor in Survive the Island, right?
Absolutely.
You need to be able to rely on people.
Yeah.
And so if she's going through this transformation,
Right.
how are they going to react to that?
And as if that's not enough,
Yeah.
at that moment, a sickly crimson light flares up in the distance.
Ooh. Okay, so now we've got two colors.
Right. Two lights.
Yeah. What do you make of that?
Well, it seems pretty clear that the red light is bad news.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I mean, this is the first time the voice actually reacts with fear.
Okay.
It identifies the red light as the source of pain,
Uh-huh.
something that must be stopped.
So now we have kind of a clear antagonist,
Yeah.
an external force that represents a threat.
And it seems to be connected to what's happening to Jordanna
Yeah.
in some way.
Yeah, right.
It's almost like we're seeing these forces of light and darkness
Yes.
coming into play here.
With Jordanna right in the middle.
Yeah.
Oh, man, caught in the crossfire.
And to complicate things even further,
Of course.
she sees Andrew, Cowin, and Boon on the beach.
Okay. So familiar faces.
Yeah, these are people she's interacted with before.
Right,
But remember, she's not the same Jordanna they knew.
right, right. She's gone through this whole ordeal.
Exactly.
She's changed.
And she notices something really interesting.
Okay, what's that?
She sees a kind of residue on Andrew and Cowin.
A residue. Interesting.
Yeah, something that feels familiar to her.
Okay.
Something that reminds her of Lauren,
Oh, okay.
but also of herself now.
Wow, so they've been touched by something too.
It seems like it.
Yeah. I wonder if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
Like, are they potential allies in this fight against the red light?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they now a danger to her?
I mean, they've been affected by the island.
Yeah.
We don't know to what extent.
Right.
And so...
Are they still themselves?
Yeah, exactly. Are they still themselves or have they become something else?
And then there's Boon.
Right.
He's kind of an enigma.
Yeah, he's always been a bit of a wild card.
Yeah. Jordanna senses that he's different,
Okay.
and for some reason the voice stays silent about him.
Interesting. So, like, he's outside of this whole conflict.
Yeah, it's like he's a wild card
Yeah.
in a game where the rules are constantly changing.
I mean, I love that the game does, you know, it keeps us guessing.
Mm-hmm.
It makes us wonder what role Boone's going to play in all of this.
Yeah. Is he going to be an ally? Is he a hidden enemy? Or is he something else entirely?
Yeah, good questions.
So we have Jordanna standing on this beach,
Right.
facing this triple threat.
Right.
She's got the voice in her head,
Mm-hmm.
this powerful red light in the distance, and the uncertainty of what's happened to the other survivors.
Wow, what a predicament.
You know, this whole situation really highlights one of the main themes of Survive the Island,
What's that?
this struggle for control.
Oh, yeah.
Jordanna's dealing with it on so many levels.
Yeah, explain that.
Well, you've got the external control, like the danger of the red light,
Mm-hmm.
the potential threat from the other survivors,
Right.
the fact that the island itself is so unpredictable.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen next.
And then there's the internal control, the voice trying to influence her,
Yeah.
the blue light changing her,
Right.
the fear and the uncertainty that she's feeling.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. This chapter is all about Jordanna's agency, her ability to make choices in a situation where it feels like everything is out of control.
All right, so get ready for a deep dive into Michelle's journey and survive the island. Specifically, Chapter 9, Part 10, The Battle Begins.
I think what's so fascinating about Michelle's experience in this chapter is how it really does mirror the human experience of confronting the unknown and kind of pushing Michelle towards a very different path.
And suddenly you realize, like, you're not just an observer. You are a part of this vast, interconnected ecosystem.
Yes, exactly. It's that shift, right? From detached observer to active participant. And for Michelle, that connection becomes even more profound when she senses this battle raging somewhere else on the island. While she's perched up high in that bloodwood tree, it's almost like a psychic link to another being, one that she feels compelled to help. And Michelle's reaction is far from passive, that primal scream that she unleashes. It's not just a reaction to this battle that she's sensing, it's almost like a release of this raw energy that she's absorbed from the bloodwood tree.
And it's fascinating how the island itself seems to react to that scream, like some kind of sleeping giant suddenly being awakened. You know, that image gives me goosebumps every time I see it.
It definitely raises the stakes, right? Michelle is no longer just a survivor on some random island. She's entangled with the very essence of this place, its history, its pain, its potential for healing.
Hmm.
And it's at this point, with that immediate threat gone, that the game presents her with these three very distinct choices, each one a potential turning point in her journey.
Yeah, it's one heck of a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
But before we get into those choices, I think it's worth just like taking a second to recap just how much Michelle has transformed in this chapter alone. I mean, she goes from cautious pragmatist to someone who's literally like tapping into the island's energy. That's character development.
It's an incredible arc, and it makes you realize that in Survive the Island, it's not just about like making it to the next chapter. It's really about how the journey itself shapes who you become.
Okay, so let's get into these choices. First up, return to the beach. It's tempting, right? Going back to where it all began, maybe searching for clues about how she even ended up on this crazy island in the first place. What do you think draws her back to that starting point?
I think there's definitely a symbolic element there.
Yeah.
That return to origins, it's like she's realizing that to move forward, she needs to understand the past, re-examine those initial choices that she made and how they led her to this very moment. Plus, there's that mysterious presence that she senses there at the beach, which just adds another layer of intrigue to it.
Ooh, good point.
Yeah.
That presence could be anything. Other survivors. A clue to the island's secrets, maybe even something connected to that corruption she saw in her visions. It's a risk, but it's also potentially like a huge opportunity to gain some answers.
And that's the brilliance of this game. Every path is a gamble, and it's up to the player, and in this case, Michelle, to weigh those potential rewards against the risks. Just like in life, right? Sometimes that safe choice leads to a dead end, and that risky path opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
Okay, so we've got the nostalgia of the beach, but then there's that call to action. Rushing to the battle that she sensed. That speaks to a whole other side of Michelle. One that's less about self-preservation and more about helping others.
It's about embracing that connection to the island and the responsibility that comes with it. You know, it's a test of her empathy, her willingness to put herself on the line for someone she's never even met, but feels so deeply connected to.
But let's be real, she's still figuring out these new powers. Rushing into a battle without fully understanding what's going on could be disastrous. Not just for her, but for the person she's trying to help.
Absolutely. It raises the question, is acting impulsively truly heroic? Or is it sometimes wiser to gather more information, to strategize before jumping into the fray? I mean, it's a dilemma that I think we grapple with in our own lives all the time, right?
Totally. It's like that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Sometimes even the best intentions can lead to unintended consequences.
And Survive the Island really doesn't shy away from exploring those gray areas. It's not just about good versus evil. It's about the complexities of human nature, the internal struggles that we all face when we're trying to make the quote-unquote right choice. And that brings us to that third and perhaps most intriguing option, venturing into the island's core.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's like going straight for the source of the problem, the heart of the mystery. It takes a lot of courage to even consider that path.
It definitely does. You know, it suggests a shift from simply surviving to actively seeking a solution, like a willingness to confront the darkness head on rather than run from it. It's a choice that I think resonates with those who seek understanding, those who believe that knowledge is power.
And remember those visions Michelle had after drinking the bloodwood sap? Those burning skies, the twisted landscape, that ominous crystal like pulsating at the island's core. It's like the game is offering her this chance to face those horrors directly, to understand their origins, and maybe even find a way to heal the island.
It's like a surgeon going straight for the source of an infection, right? Knowing that the risks are super high. But the potential reward is even greater. It's a choice that embodies a sense of purpose. A chance to achieve something truly transformative both for Michelle and for the island itself.
And let's not forget about the potential risks here. What if the core is just too corrupted, too powerful for even Michelle's newfound abilities to overcome? What if by venturing into that darkness, she risks becoming consumed by it herself?
It's a classic cautionary tale, isn't it? The hero who confronts ultimate evil, but risks becoming corrupted in the process. It's a theme that has resonated throughout literature and mythology. And Survive the Island seems to be tapping into that archetype in a really compelling way.
Okay, so we've got these three incredible options laid out before us. Returning to the beach, a chance to revisit the past, seek answers, and perhaps encounter some unexpected allies. Rushing to the battle, a test of courage, empathy, and the responsible use of power, and venturing into the island's core. A perilous journey into the heart of darkness, with the potential for both profound healing and, some pretty devastating consequences.
Each choice is fraught with risk and reward, and I think it's so fascinating to consider, which path would we choose if we were in Michelle's shoes?
We're focusing in on Chelsea and Peter, and a moment in Chapter 9, Part 11,
Which is called?
called You Are Nothing.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is, and it's where the island's true nature, it starts to reveal itself.
Now, Chelsea and Peter, they've been playing this very differently.
Oh, total opposites. Chelsea is cautious. She's all about the team.
Okay.
Like she's building shelter, managing supplies, trying to keep everyone's morale up, classic stuff. Peter, he started out simple, like logical, big on cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
But he's getting more and more fascinated by the island's weirdness.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can see that even in the early chapters, right? Remember when Chelsea figures out those glyphs on the stone slab?
Oh, that was a turning point for sure.
Huge. And it leads them both down this path that, well, it gets pretty dangerous.
And by Chapter 9, it is intense. They go down into this abyss. The island's influence is getting stronger. You can feel it.
Yeah.
Part 11. You are nothing. They're not on the same page anymore.
They're not even in the same reality at that point. They
Tremendous.
end up in this void, and it's described as a breathing emptiness, a place where nothing makes sense.
Yeah.
They don't have bodies, they don't have weight, they're just awareness, you know?
Which, talk about a shift.
Yeah.
It went from tangible threats to, existential dread.
Right. And that gets at what this whole thing's about. Boundaries breaking down between the physical and the mental, the self and everything else. That island, at first it seemed like just a place, even if it was a creepy place. Now it's something more.
Yeah, it's getting internal in a way.
Totally. And then we have to talk about the visions. These glimpses of the island, but it's all wrong. The sky's too close. The trees are writhing around. The ocean's doing things that oceans shouldn't do. It's warping reality.
And they're seeing not just how it looks different, but different versions of it, right? The past, the present, maybe even futures.
Futures, yeah, yeah. Things that could have been. This is where we start to realize the island's not just a place, it's a thing. It's aware, it's been watching them this whole time.
Talk about a power shift, right?
Oh, massive.
You go from, I need to find berries to the ground beneath me has its own agenda.
And that's where the choice appears. The blue path and the gold path. But these aren't paths you'd walk on, are they?
No, more like conceptual paths.
Yeah.
Like what you choose to become, not where you choose to go.
Yeah.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah, the blue path, it's about surrender and also revelation. It offers knowledge, all the knowledge, the truth about the island, everything. All those mysteries that Peter's been, obsessed with, they'd be answered.
But there's a catch, right? Like, there's this feeling that if you take that path, you might lose yourself,
Mm-hmm.
become part of the island's knowledge, like a drop in the ocean.
Exactly. And then there's the gold path. Life, struggle, just constant movement. No answers, but there's warmth, there's change. It's about becoming, about continuing to exist, even if it's hard.
So it's like choosing uncertainty over maybe knowing too much.
Right, right. It's not good versus evil. It's two different ways of being. This isn't like an escape room puzzle. This gets at the core of what it means to exist.
So chapter 9 ends with Chelsea and Peter facing this decision. Alone, stripped of everything familiar, they have to choose. Knowledge that could erase them, or the struggle to keep being, with no guarantees.
Makes you think, what do you think draws each of them to each path? What are their motivations? What are they afraid of?
Ooh, that is a great question. Now, before we try and get into their heads about this choice, I think we got to talk about just how messed up this whole situation is for Chelsea and Peter, right?
Totally, yeah. I mean, they're in this void, no bodies, no memories, not even the island they kind of knew. It's like making the biggest decision ever, but with zero context, you know?
And there's no going back, no do-overs. They pick a path, and that's it. No clue what the real consequence is going to be.
Mm. Right, it gets all philosophical and stuff. But okay, let's break down each path, starting with that blue one. Why would someone, especially Peter, be so drawn to it?
Yeah, let's get into it.
So blue path, it's all about knowing everything. The truth about the island, where it came from, why it exists, maybe even the fate of all those people they saw in the visions, like all the answers. And for someone like Peter, who's been getting more and more obsessed with the mystery of it all, that's got to be tempting.
It is. It's like the ultimate temptation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, full disclosure, I'm a blue path kind of person. Give me the knowledge, even if it breaks me. But that's just me. Let's look at the other side, that gold path. What's the appeal there? Is it just blind faith? Like endless struggle?
Not really. Think of it as like saying yes to being alive without needing explanations for everything. The gold path, it's described as having warmth, movement, change. It's the path of becoming, of experiencing, even if that means hardship.
So less thinking, more feeling, like trusting your gut, even if you're not sure where you're going. That's, I think, a different kind of courage than going for the knowledge.
Absolutely. It's the courage to face the unknown, to believe that even without all the answers, life itself is worthwhile. And maybe, just maybe, going through that struggle, that constant becoming, maybe that leads to a different type of knowledge, one you earn, not just receive.
I like that, yeah. It's not about right or wrong. It's about what matters to you, right? Like,
Mm.
is knowledge the goal? Or is it the journey of living that matters more? Now, where does the island fit into all this? We keep saying it's aware, watching them, but what's its deal? Is it good, bad, something else entirely?
So we got to, look at the clues and make some guesses.
Okay, let's play detective then. We know it's aware, watching them, maybe even messing with them a bit. Those visions they're having, those glimpses of the island's past, present, what-ifs, those weren't random, right?
No way.
It's like the island is showing them specific things, like pieces of a puzzle it wants them to put together.
Or maybe it wants them to get the wrong picture, who knows? Because the island never tells them what to do, right? It just offers these options, these hints, but the choice is still theirs.
So it's testing them, seeing how they'll react to the stuff it shows them, the paths it lays out, almost like the island's doing its own experiment and Chelsea and Peter are the subjects.
It's weird because if the island's thinking for itself, then this isn't a game the way we usually think of games. Usually there's rules, there's a goal, But here, the goal keeps changing, depending on both what the players do and whatever the island wants.
So it's a living, breathing game board, constantly shifting, responding to them. So it's not about winning or losing. It's more about discovering something, maybe about themselves or about the island.
That's the question, isn't it? And it brings us back to Chelsea and Peter. This choice they're facing, it's like two sides of what it means to be human. One wants to know, the other wants to be. One wants control, the other acceptance. Which one will they pick? And what will that tell us about them, about the island, about everything? It's those questions, those uncertainties, the things we don't know but kind of desperately want to. That's where the good stuff is.
So let's turn it over to you listening. What's sticking with you about Chelsea and Peter's story? Is it the, fighting to survive against all odds, the temptation of knowing all the secrets, or maybe that creepy feeling that, we're not really in control as much as we think we are? To everyone out there playing Survive the Island, I say this, choose wisely, play bravely, and never stop exploring the mysteries of the island, both in the game and within yourselves. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, stay curious and keep on gaming.